So you haven't done one of these, Harrison, am I right?
That's right. This is my first one.
All right. Well, what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about your story and just some of the broader kind of situations in residential brokerage and also what's going on with Anywhere Real Estate. Obviously, we cover all of these companies pretty closely. Anywhere is probably the biggest one, close to 200,000 agents as of last June. And they've gone and done another round of layoffs. And what's interesting is that they've also, shuttered their iBuying division. So we'll talk about all of that. For those who just joined, I'm Hiten Samtani. This is Harrison Connery. We're with The Real Deal, and we're going to be talking about big news today that Anywhere Real Estate, which is the parent company of Sotheby's, Corcoran, Coldwell Banker, and many, many other big brokerages, announced another round of layoffs. And it also said no mas to iBuying. Now, iBuying was a very big and very controversial bet that was taken by so many of these companies. And Harrison, this isn't the first one to pull the plug, right? This Anywhere, it's basically following so many others who've said we're done.
Yeah, it's following several other companies, including, Redfin shuttered its iBuying. Zillow reported a $900 million loss and winded down its iBuying a little bit ahead of schedule, if I recall correctly, earlier this year. Open Door, was I think the OG in that space, and they've lost quite a bit of money.
Quite a bit. I think quite a bit is putting it lightly. Let's put a number on that. They lost in Q3. They lost $928 million.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
and
true.
Zillow, I think when they abandoned their program, had lost close to just over $900 million as well. So we're talking staggering losses. These aren't, private equity giants. These are not companies that are supposed to lose this kind of money. And they're not tech companies either. So no one knows how investors were okay with this for so long. But now we're kind of seeing those chickens come home to roost. So they're down, right? They've definitively shuttered their iBuying division, or is this like a temporary pause like others have done before?
So the company didn't go into detail beyond what was in the SEC filing. The SEC filing said it was winding down its iBuying, which I take to mean is they're closing it down. I don't know what the timetable is for that, though.
Right. And so let's just talk about the broader layoffs. Now, we had a question in from Alexis about, do these layoffs affect the subsidiary brokerages as well? Are there layoffs at Anywhere Corporate, or are they layoffs at Corcoran, Sotheby's, et cetera? Do we have any sense of that?
My understanding is that they're at Anywhere Corporate. Usually when there's something that affects the subsidiaries, I'm passed off to those subsidiaries. I could be wrong about that because, again, the company really stuck to what was in the SEC filing, but my understanding is it's at Anywhere. Additionally, I spoke to some folks who said they try to get in touch with some employees there, and we're not able to.
Right, and this is following the news that happened last month, the scoop that you had about Ryan Gorman, the CEO of Coldwell Banker, was essentially let go from the company. That was a very, very big deal, right? That was a major executive. And what happened with his role? Did they find a replacement, or how did they kind of deal with that?
So they filled that position from within. They had Ryan, who was taking care of Coldwell Banker, and then they had Susan. I'm so sorry, I don't know exactly how to pronounce her last name, but I think it's Yannicone, who was running all the other subsidiaries. So they just essentially gave the whole thing over to her, and I don't think they replaced his position officially, though. I think that title was just eliminated for the time being.
And that was a $3.5 million compensation package last year, right? That's a big part of why this might be happening. So are these layoffs coming, as someone who covers this industry closely, are these layoffs coming as a surprise to you? Or was this part of something?
Anywhere had said, in late 2021 that they were going to be planning, cost-cutting initiatives for the foreseeable future. Ryan Schneider said he thought they had several years of cost-cutting ahead of them. So I think this is part of a longer-term strategy to get down their debt, which they've been doing pretty well since the late 20-teens. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were more on the horizon. I haven't been told that, but just based on Schneider's earlier comments, I took those to mean that we should be expecting them until further notice.
And they had talked about, I think their target to cut expenses is pretty ambitious. I think it was $300 million by the end of 2026. So that means this can't be the end of whatever happens. Is there any indication, because I think they're not the only ones, as we've pointed out. Compass had another round of layoffs that you reported on either this week or last week. That was the third in the past year. All of these companies have really stressed that the agent experience will not be affected. According to your sources, how is that borne out? Either company or both companies, or in general, at some point, if you remove employees, you're essentially removing some service that I would imagine the agents would use, right? And we have a lot of agents on this call and in general who are interested in this stuff.
Right, right. I haven't heard, any complaints directly from agents. What I have heard from some other folks in the industry is that they've noticed a lot more agents interviewing, particularly from Compass, trying to jump over to other brokerages. Now I've just heard that in passing from a few people, but people who would be in the know. So I do take it with some legitimacy, and so I think they're not immune to these, layoffs, just like anybody else. I think, after a certain amount of time, you can't help but grow concerned.
Right, and what was interesting with Compass, one last point on them, is Robert Reffkin, I believe, was on CNBC yesterday, and he had essentially blamed the Fed for their predicament. He had said, he said, they artificially reduced the revenue of our industry. Now, that might be the case in this, in the last 6 months or so, but Compass has been losing money even through the record years, right? Whereas other companies like Anywhere were able to turn a pretty hefty profit. How much of what's going on in the industry are leaders blaming on the macro environment?
That's a really good question. I think everybody is blaming the situation to some extent on the macro environment. I've talked to several executives who said, we never could have predicted that interest rates would be, where they are now at this time last year. So to some extent, everyone is doing that. And I think, in a sense, that's fair because, that is what's slowing down the market. On the other hand, one of our favorite analysts, Jonathan Miller, says interest rates were too low for too long. So you can't help but think that perhaps, someone should have been anticipating an increase at some point. It's not like they were going to stay where they were forever.
Right. I think that's the volatility of it. The speed at which the interest rates rose is what is, at least people are saying, is what really rocked them and forced them to make some pretty hard decisions. And are you seeing this bear out? You're also, in your day job, you're also a New York City residential reporter. You're covering the luxury market overall. What are you seeing just broader market in New York that might be playing out and causing some of these problems at the firms?
Yeah, I mean, we saw some slowdowns in the luxury market in Manhattan and Brooklyn. They're certainly not getting up to the same, weekly totals that they were last spring. There's some more concessions that are happening. There was a property in Dumbo that was offering an extra $50,000 to buyers brokers if they could close a deal by the end of December. I think Extel is right now doing a 5% buyers broker bonus if they can get a deal done soon. So people are in the new development world also, people are trying to do what they can to close deals.
Right. I think it's a good barometer. What's happening in the new development market in Manhattan does trickle over into other luxury markets. We're seeing a slowdown in Miami too, right? Miami had probably the biggest year of its recent history last year, just record after record. And Palm Beach and places like that, the prices ended up being what they are in the Hamptons, which was unbelievable for most people until last year. Now we're seeing some slowdowns. We're also seeing some signs of distress. But I wonder where agents are going to go from here, right? A lot of agents, and when you talk to maybe agents who've got into the business in the last 4 or 5 years, they've only seen the good times, right? What kind of sense are you getting from them? Because people who've been through a few cycles have a bit more of a measured approach and have some money in the bank. They can kind of see through these things. But people who might have come in since 2015 have only seen bonanzas. So I wonder what kind of temperature you're taking there.
That's a good question. Most of the people I talk to have been in the business for quite a while. Given that I cover the luxury market, it's tough for newer brokers to be in that space very much. I have spoken to some folks who, are actually salaried. They're getting their feet wet. They're working for a more established broker, and in the meantime, they have some kind of a salary to tide them over. Because for anyone, this is a hard business to get into. I once spoke to someone who's a top broker now, and they said their first year they sold $9,000 worth of real estate. That was a long time ago, but it just goes to show that that first year for anyone is really tough. So getting in as just a broker without some kind of help on the side is almost impossible, no matter what the market's like.
Right, and I think it's going to be an interesting market to follow. This doesn't impact brokers directly, but we had reported yesterday about the FTC considering a ban on non-competes, which is going to make it a little bit easier for employees and top executives of brokerage firms to jump from one to the other. So there are a lot of big things going on. We'll wrap up in a second, but I wanted to know what else you're kind of chasing, what else you're kind of interested in.
We've got we're going to take a look at headcount later this week, see how the headcount of different brokerages has fluctuated over the past year. We're looking at some strategies that companies have to keep profitability going, to keep the money coming in during the downturn. One big story I'm looking at is coaches and the value they add to brokerage teams, because Robert Refkin, CEO of Compass, was really big on that. He was very aggressive about advising brokers to hire coaches last fall. So I'd like to take a close look at that and see how that's working out for folks.
If anyone on this call uses a coach, has considered using a coach, please reach out to Harrison. Harrison, where can people find you?
You can feel free to email me at harrison.connery@therealdeal.com. Which you can do directly, or at the bottom of any of my stories there's that contact the author button, and I'll see whatever emails you send through that as well.
Sounds good. And the Angry Baby can be found at The Real Deal. You'll hopefully be seeing him soon. Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone for tuning in.
Thank you. Bye.